All right, thanks for joining us for the manual cueing series. Again, I am here with Betsy Walker of CoralinePilates.com, and she has been so kind to spend some time with us today to go over the long stretch series. So this is a series I've been wanting to explore with you in terms of hands-on cueing, and I want to do it in a way that you can take the information and use it on each exercise, but then also look at how to promote a sense of flow as we bring these 5 exercises into kind of a more dynamic integration together. So Betsy's going to start by coming onto the reformer. We're going to explore long stretch first, and she's going to come on hand, foot, hand, foot. So right away, depending on what the body is trained to do, we want to set the body up for success, and we want to be very clear about what our intention is for the exercise. Now, my intentions may not be your intentions, but I want to help you draw the connections between what I want from her and how I'm using my hands to get that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to set Betsy up in a plank position. So I'm going to have her, instead of pressing the carriage out, which would be easier, is I'm going to have her come forward over her wrists, lower her hips, float her head. Yeah, because I know she can do this, so I want her to do it because it's a little more challenging. Challenge areas are going to be a drop in the rib cage. So closed fingers, informing touch around the ribs, taking a breath into my hands, Betsy, and lifting. So you can see that just by cueing the breath and using the hands, I'm slightly lifting her ribs up as well to give her a sense of fullness across the low ribs and also an activation across the upper back. You want the head to be lifted and in line so it's natural. Good. And then oftentimes hands bolting the hips together in order to get her to engage her glutes and inner thighs just a tad bit more. There's energy through the heels. Push, point your toes a little bit more for me. Yes, right there. So the heels are just over the toes. You're not really plantar flexed too much or dorsiflexed too much. Now I want you to keep that energy through the feet. I'm going to have her, so I have to come back here. Don't lose this. Go ahead, Betsy. Inhale back. First thing I'm going to do is keep my hands on her hips. Exhale, come forward. I want you to really gather up around the pelvis as you pull forward. So because the low back and pelvis can be a weak link in long stretch, my hands and my attention are going to her pelvis first. Inhale back. Hands are wrapping around the hips in front of the ASIS, my fingertips in her deep belly. Exhale, come in. And think of floating up off your arm bones. Yes. So I'm gathering in and helping her find this. Now I'm going to look at the tush and make sure that the tush stays activated. Inhale out. I'm also pulling her a little bit to tell her I want her to go out. Exhale and wrap through the front as you give the butt just a tiny little pinch, engaging the inner thighs. Good. You can do one more for me. If I want to look at the chest, I can bring one hand to the chest right in the collarbones and lift up from the heel of my hand as I bring my touch into the back between the scapula. I lied. Let's do one more. Press out. So heel of the hand, stay right there for me for a moment. I have the heel of my hand on her sternum just below her collarbones, and I'm picking her up. I want her to keep picking up, so I'm encouraging a lift between the scapula as she floats over the arm bones. Go ahead and rest for a moment. Very nice. So for me, when I'm teaching long stretch, I'm trying to zero in and focus on the 2 areas that are most important to me, which are what the low back and pelvis are doing and how they're supported by the lower abdominals, the glutes, and the hamstrings. So hence my hands around the pelvis, and then cueing the bolting of the hips, and then watching the shoulders. Right? The initial cueing of the ribs is really important and something that you'll come back to over and over again, because the tendency is to go out and sink down as we come in, and go out and sink down. So with the breath, that lateral posterior breathing and the hands on the rib cage, pressing in and lifting up, we give the body a very clear indication about where we want it to go. And then the last piece of that was the hand on the sternum. So heel of the hand right under the sternum, with the other hand to support the intention or the direction. Any thoughts or feedback about that cueing?
Oh, it's very helpful to have that lift up, off, out of the hands and support for the serratus as well as for the transverse.
Great. Great.
Yeah,
And the
helpful.
initial cueing from the hips, how does that feel?
I like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because you know where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
You know where you need to focus when you have that touch.
Great. Good. So the things to remember, so this is an informing touch and can be an assisting touch in terms of adjusting alignment or balance in the pelvis, is to make sure that the fingers are closed and that you have a very firm touch, right? Because we're trying to match the level or pressure of our touch with the amount of effort we want the student to be exercising. So if it's a very light touch, it gives a certain impression, correct? And if it's a very firm touch, it gives us like, this is serious business, this is where we want our attention, and this is where we want our effort. Okay, so some things to remember about long stretch.